Landscape photography is a powerful way to connect with nature, a reminder of how small we are in the vast world around us. When it comes to landscape photography in Australia, there's arguably no better place than the iconic Great Ocean Road and Otways. A Photographer's Guide to the Great Ocean Road and Otways by Samantha Olsen is a book that provides everything you need to know about 152 different shoot locations, from the best times of day to visit, the ideal seasons, tide heights, drone regulations, even whether you can bring your dog. It's your ultimate guide to photographing the Great Ocean Road and Otways safely and creatively. 4 years of research went into this book, uncovering hidden locations and determining the best and safest times to visit each one. Those of you with limited time, this book will help you make the most of every moment you have. Whether you shoot with a DSLR or mirrorless camera, or if you're planning to visit the Great Ocean Road or Otways, this book can be your essential companion. Here's what you'll find inside: 152 shoot locations, a location breakdown separated into accommodation areas for easy planning, skills for great landscape images focused on seascapes and waterfalls, weather and tidal information. With 750 pages of information and over 1,000 full-colour images and diagrams, this book is a treasure trove of knowledge. This how-to photography guide, combined with a travel guide, all in one beautifully crafted book, gives you everything you need so you don't waste a moment of your trip. So, don't miss out. Visit Kickstarter.com and search for Great Ocean Road book to get your copy today. Choose a package that includes a physical hardcover book to enjoy all the beautiful images, plus an ebook so you can take this guide with you wherever you go. Get ready to discover the Great Ocean Road like never before. Hello and welcome to Landscape Photography World, the podcast for everyone passionate about landscape photography. I'm Grant Swinburne and I'll be your host on this show, talking to landscape photographers about their motivations, likes and dislikes. Mads Peter Iversen, a full-time landscape photographer from Denmark, shares his artistic journey from his early photographic experiments to becoming a leading educator in the field. He discusses the importance of planning, visualization, and how his inspirations from fantasy films to Scandinavian minimalism shape his work. Mads explains his approach to storytelling through images, balancing business with creativity and the evolving role of post-processing in bringing his vision to life. He also offers insights into navigating YouTube success, staying relevant in the industry, and helping others develop their own artistic voice in landscape photography. I hope you enjoy the show. Hey Mads, welcome to Landscape Photography World. How are you going?
Thank you very much for having me. I'm all good.
An absolute pleasure having you on the show. It's something that I've wanted to do for a long time. And I'm really excited to have you on because I know that you've got quite a following both on YouTube, Instagram and social media. And there's probably a lot of people who may have heard some of what you might say today, but I'm sure we'll try and dig out some stuff that people haven't heard before and try and get to the bottom of the Mads Peter Iversen story if we can.
Let's try. It's going to be over fast.
I'm going to go deep first off. What does photography mean to you? What is it in your life?
I am doing more than just photography in my life, but it's my work. It was my hobby, and then it became my work, and it's been my work full-time job for a very long time. So it takes up a lot, and I think in photography all the time I have a tendency to always look ahead because as a landscape photographer we're so dependent on the weather and so forth. So it's good to keep having like your mindset on the weather forecast all the time.
Okay.
So in that way it takes up a lot of, like, I won't say it takes up a lot of my mentality, but it's something that's important. I think in pictures, when I walk out in town, I always see possibilities. When I go out in nature, I always think, can I use this in my landscape photography? When I drive from one place to another, I always think in landscape photography. So in that way, I'm mentally always working.
Yeah. I'm certainly one of the obsessed people because I do think it is an obsession for a lot of people. And I think it's that obsessive nature which keeps a lot of people doing it. And I've definitely heard that from you. What do you
Absolutely.
do and where do you go to get inspired? Because obviously, if you're going to the same old places and seeing the same old things can get a little bit stale. How do you stay inspired?
Yeah, so generally I get my inspiration from many other landscape photographers, both on YouTube but also on Instagram. So social media plays a big role there. But that can, as you said, be a little bit stagnant if you keep seeing the same thing again and again and again. My partner, she is an academic and she works with researching religion, but both of us are also super interested in culture. So we actually visit quite a lot of museums. And it's always interesting because we're drawn to the same kind of pictures or paintings in the
Mm,
museums. There's always those 1800s paintings and those that look realistic. It's like
yeah,
romanticism,
yeah,
beautiful paintings from the 1800s. So something like that we do quite a lot. I try to look a little bit beyond also what landscape photography can offer. I also find something from other photographers that can be inspiring. My only issue is that over the years, I have narrowed down to the fact that it is landscape photography that I enjoy the most.
yeah,
Admittedly, I do not look a whole lot at street photography, not a whole lot on wildlife photography either. So that can be a little bit hard. Where else I find inspiration is especially in travel books about Denmark. Like if I want to get some inspiration for where to go and photograph in my more like local neighborhood, I basically call all of Denmark my local neighborhood because it's such a small country.
oh,
So
sure.
I can basically drive from Copenhagen to the northernmost part of Jutland, which is the peninsula that is attached to Germany,
Mm,
in 4.5-ish hours.
okay.
So and that's that more or less the biggest stretch you can drive in Denmark. So it's quite easy to get around. So I look at a lot of like travel books, hiking books, books about nature where you can walk, bicyclist books actually
Okay.
even because there's usually pictures alongside with that, and I don't necessarily need to see like that it's the best picture in the world. It's also just, oh, this area has these kind of hills, and then I
Sure.
can go myself and explore it more and see if there's actually some more potential and something like that. So
Yeah.
that's basically how I approach getting inspiration, like outside of just being on social media.
Yeah. Okay. And in terms of what you were talking about before, it being on your mind all the time, do you call yourself a planner in your photography or are you more reactive? So do you pre-visualize? Do you plan? Looking
I'm
for
I'm
something?
probably more in the planning part for
Yeah.
sure. It's I can definitely see when I look down over my portfolio, especially from Denmark, because this is where I can say control my photography the most. Let's say if I went to Australia or if I went to New Zealand or Britain or something like that, and I'm only there for a limited period of a week
Yeah.
or 2 weeks, you get the weather that you get. You can try to like have an hop and then go out to the different locations based
Yep.
on the weather, but you get the weather that you get.
Yeah.
Like
You
if you
you
go in
you've
summer,
got a limited amount of time and no real
exactly, yeah.
flexibility. Yeah.
Yeah, I won't get hoarfrost if I go in summer. And if there's a specific photo I want with hoarfrost, then you have to wait for it. It's
That's
just
right.
how it is. Yeah. And I have a decently vivid imagination, and I think I'm pretty decent at like pre-visualizing
Yeah.
scenes. And I think I benefit quite a lot from that. So my strategy is usually just to go out, explore, spend the time on that, find points of interest in the landscape, and then I visit it during interesting conditions. It doesn't necessarily have to be the conditions that are pre-visualized. I have a lot of experiences with actually just going to the location of potential during interesting weather conditions, even though I maybe want a place with fog, but then I get like storm clouds instead, which is cool. So in that way, that said, I often also capture a lot of really good photos that I had not planned when I'm out taking photos. So it's usually a bit of both, but it is the pre-visualized photo, the pre-visualized scene, the planned scene that I go out to capture, and then I get a lot of other stuff on the way.
Yeah, awesome. What do you remember of the first place that you went to and captured a shot and said, "Okay, this is it. This is what I want to do with my life."
I
That
actually
moment,
remember that very vividly. Yeah, so I started out my photography journey, you can say about like 2010, 2011 with my first cameras. And but before that I had actually been quite a lot into videography, so the creative part of me was already there and had been there for many years. And I actually started out with like portrait photography, wedding photography, headshot photography, and all that stuff. But slowly I also found that I actually enjoy just being out in nature and taking photos of nature and these
mm,
scenes. And it was especially social media that inspired me to go beyond Denmark. Back then, I hadn't seen Denmark for the potential that there is. So it was all about going to Iceland, going to the US, going to mountain areas. We don't have mountains in Denmark, so it's quite an exotic thing for me. But long story short, I made it to Iceland after a lot of inspiration there. And on the first day I arrived in Iceland, so I sailed from Denmark to Iceland, borrowed my parents' car, so it was cheaper for me. And on the first day, I photographed three different waterfalls. I'd never photographed waterfalls before. I got the
yeah,
most epic sunset. And on my way to my accommodation, suddenly I saw like stuff going on in the sky, and I was like, oh my God, that's Northern Lights. I have no clue why it did not occur to me that there was a chance of getting Northern Lights in Iceland in my entire research process. I probably did, but I didn't really expect it.
yeah, right.
Like, I wanted to find locations where I could photograph the Milky Way from and stuff like that. But
Mhm.
suddenly, Northern Lights, when I was there, was an option. I threw in all my stuff in the accommodation, drove 40 minutes back to where I came from, hiked up a volcano crater, and spent the entire night walking around the perimeters of that volcano crater and photographed the northern lights while it was just like exploding over my head. And that was where I was just like, this is it. This is what I'm going to do. So
Awesome.
yeah, that was the story of that.
And how did you make the transition career-wise? Obviously, up until that time, it was a hobby.
Yeah.
And was that the moment when you said, okay, I want to make this my life and I want to make a career out of it? Or was that come along later?
I knew that I wanted to do it. Figuring out how to do it was a little bit harder because I'm in no way, shape, or form educated in business.
Mm,
And when you go independent as a landscape photographer, you need to learn to earn money. That's the important part of
business
having
person.
it as a job, is that's where your income comes from. I had filmed quite a lot on my first trip there to Iceland, and I already had experiences with YouTube, but it actually took me a year before I started my YouTube channel. I
Mm,
knew people had started earning money through YouTube back then, and I knew that you could probably do it like that. I also saw that some were educational on YouTube, and for me that was like quite obvious because I'm an educated teacher and I've been a sports coach for I don't know at that point
okay.
15 or so years. So
Right,
the
right.
educational part for me was quite obvious. And back then, I still earned a little bit of money from doing some wedding jobs, doing some videography stuff, portrait sessions, all that stuff. So I I also had a job in a photography store, and
Yeah.
that only lasted like half a year. I found out that has nothing to do with actually being a photographer. So there, but then it gave me the kick to actually go out and do it on my own and figure out how to earn money. So I basically just took every single job I could, no matter how badly paid it was. I purposely also decided not to benefit from the social systems in Denmark because I needed the motivation to take the jobs. And how, at the very least back then, when you get the social benefit money in Denmark, then you have to basically give up what you earn up till the where you get the social money. So if I
Yeah,
get like
right.
18,000 Danish crowns a month in social benefit money, then the money I earn up to 18,000, I basically have to hand them over
Yeah.
to the
Fair enough.
to the state. And you can argue for and against that, but that was for me very demotivating. So
Yeah.
I decided not to benefit from that system and simply just, okay, I earn the money that I do, and then I have to live on a stone. I also, at that point, due to like relationship status and all that stuff, I moved back home with my parents, and I actually ended up living there for a couple of years. So it was very beneficial that I don't had a whole lot of expenses in the meantime there
Yeah,
while
help
I was
save money.
building up my
Yeah,
company. Yeah. So in that way, I could see it slowly grow without the stress of my own expenses.
sure.
And making that transition was, I feel for me, less stressful and beneficial. I dare not think about how that would have been if I had kids and a
Yeah,
house
yeah.
and all the other expenses. But I guess at that time I was still like very young. So I think it's a good place to start when you're young and you don't have to transition from that when you already have an established life.
You talked about not being educated in business. What have
Mhm.
you learnt from running your own business?
That it is business. That I have found over the years that a lot of people are afraid of money. And there is like a little bit of, oh, you're in business, you're a scumbag mentality often, especially in Denmark. Denmark
Yeah.
is by no way like we get. I often hear from a certain part of America that Denmark is a socialist country. Denmark is by no way a socialist country. We are a very capitalist country, but we have a welfare system. But we don't really have a big culture for entrepreneurship. We
Yeah.
do have some big companies. Actually, the biggest company in Europe up until a few months ago was Novo Nordisk,
Mm.
and Maersk is our shipping company. We have Vestas that makes wind turbines, and Lego, obviously. We do have some big companies in Denmark, but the mentality for entrepreneurship is not really there.
Mm.
So having to get into that mindset where, okay, I can actually earn money on my own. This is actually a real job. I
Yeah.
should not feel ashamed of making a product that has a perceived value from people and
Mm.
actually sell it and earn money from it. That was really hard for me
Yeah.
to get to that point. But once you're there, you're like, okay, so at the very least, not thinking in business, but thinking in how can I provide enough value to people so I do not feel ashamed of actually selling my products. Like I made a few products to begin with, some tutorials.
Yep.
I made my ebooks. I had my maps, tried to provide a lot of value with that. But I haven't really made any big products since 2019, like before the pandemic. And in that meantime, I have been working on my third ebook that I just released a few months back. But I don't want to like just push out products. I don't want to just overwhelm people with, oh, there's this new product, there's this new thing, and all that stuff. I want it to be good value. And
Yeah.
at the very least, I think that's probably also 101 in business,
Yep.
that you providing good value is a good business decision. But it's simply just a question about getting over the fact that it's actually not shameful earning money
Yeah.
from what you can provide of value, I think. So that's been the biggest thing. And then from there, it's all about what can you actually make of products. And I would say that Nigel Danson, who's my good friend and colleague, has been very beneficial to have him as a good friend,
Yeah.
and very inspirational because he himself had built up a big software company before he went full time with landscape photography, and
Yep.
that has been very good. Also, James Popsis, who I work with and can see how he does it and figure things out, and just having a lot of like peers and other photographers who are actually full time, see what they do and talk with them about it and learn from them. I consider my all landscape photographers who go full time, I consider them more as partners, colleagues than competitors. Like
Sure.
there's enough space for all of us, I think. So at the very least, that's easy for me to say because I'm doing fine. But I guess some people,
Somebody who might be earlier in their journey might be saying, I see you as
yeah.
a competitor, man. I'm interested. You raised a couple of points there, but one that sort of stood out to me was that we have a thing in Australia called the tall poppy syndrome, which is
Hmm.
if you grow too tall, somebody's going to chop you down. And it's about that
Yeah.
entrepreneurship of being and the shame of making money. And so that resonates a lot. One of the things that you also mentioned was putting out products, but not too many and not too often, and trying to get that balance right. And I think one of the things that a lot of people, and not just in photography, but a lot of companies get wrong is that they try to diversify too much, or
Mhm.
they try to push too hard with certain products that people might not want. And that perception of value for money is a vital ingredient, I think, to any business that's
Yeah.
out there, and anyone that wants to be in business is being able to say, okay, here's the value that I'm adding, and therefore I'm asking a reasonable price for it. I think the other side of things that I'm always interested in talking about balance is how you balance the rest of your life with the photography life, because as we said at the beginning, it's an obsession.
Yeah.
How do you divert yourself from the obsession and take care of the family, take care of other things in your life?
Super easy. I don't. No, jokes aside, the thing is, I don't have kids, so that helps a lot. Right now, my partner Sophie, who I've been with for 7 years by now, she's actually living in Stockholm while I live in Copenhagen because she has a job with Stockholm University. But we actually go quite a lot back and forward between the cities, which we quite enjoy and having access to both cities. But she's a workaholic like me, and you have to be that when you are in her field of research because it takes time. So in that way, whenever we are actually together, we start working from 8, 9 in the morning, and sometimes at some point someone looks up and be like, should we maybe stop for today? And it's 7 or 8 in the evening. So in that way, we have a very, I guess some would say, unhealthy work-life balance. We do try to take time off sometimes, but we just work all the time. We're very passionate, both of us, about
Yeah.
what we do. So that helps a lot. But we are not young anymore. Like both of us next big birthday is 40. So we can definitely feel it that even though we work with something that we really enjoy, her more than me have had symptoms of stress. And I also had symptoms of stress. And I don't want to get to the point where that it becomes stressful. I felt that in the end of 2023 when we were out of the pandemic, and during the pandemic I could just go all in on YouTube and I could do everything I wanted without
You could
also
get
having
hyper
to
focused.
workshops and traveling and all that stuff. But suddenly keeping up with everything I did during the pandemic regarding YouTube, but then add traveling and workshops to it too, suddenly that became a little bit too much. Having to find that balance was a little bit harder. So I'm doing less workshops and less traveling than I did in 2023 now. So cut off a couple of workshops and just do less traveling. And also here in the beginning of 2025, I decided not to run any workshops for the first 4 months, simply just because I needed to relax. I needed to not having to travel all the time. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, you're so lucky, Mads, that you can travel all the time and you can have this as a job. Yes, when you do travel all the time and airports do become like something that is normal, the traveling part of it can become stressful,
Yeah.
especially when you have a lot of other things to do, answer emails, keep up with social media.
Also, if you're on a workshop, organising the other
Yeah,
people's itineraries as well and making sure they're
exactly.
where
Yeah.
they need to be.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So all those things like it adds up, and trying to find that balance, it takes time and experience, but it's just about trying to keep evaluating your life and your life decisions and figure out how to, yeah,
Mm.
make it all work out. I dare not think about how this would all work if I had children.
Yeah, I can certainly recommend not having children. I've got three, but they're all adults now, so
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about what they're up
Yeah.
to too much. I do as a parent. You can't stop it, but yeah, what their choices are their choices, and that makes me a little bit more free to go off and do some of my own choices with my wife as well.
Exactly.
I'm interested in how you set yourself with creative projects, and do you have a process around working out what your next project is going to be? Do you have a grab bag of projects that you're always dipping into? Do you have projects at all, or do you just do your thing
Yeah.
organically?
I would definitely say I do things organically. I have ideas and stuff like that all the time in the back of my head, things I want to do, but I never talk about them loudly because then suddenly I feel I'm obliged to actually do it. Like just throwing a lot of stuff out there and then never
Yeah.
get around to
But
it.
once,
That
once you
becomes
say it, it's got to
stressful.
happen. It's real.
Yeah, I know how much mental power it has taken for me to get my third ebook done because it was not just like redesigning some slides or just talking about like composition as I always do. It was actually talking about light, which is something I don't talk a whole lot about, and trying to get that from the ideas and how I work and how, yeah, I'll get that into like very few sentences that make sense for people. And it took me like 5 years to get through that ebook because I had so many other things to also do. So it's just like, oh, nice. Now it's done. I don't want to start anything big because basically, like when you do YouTube and you do a new video each week, it's a new product each week
Yeah.
or a new project each week. So in that way, but obviously I also have some like long term, like I really do want to make a physical book at some point. And I have so many things. I want to make one from Iceland. I want to make one from the Faroe Islands. I want to make one from Denmark and all that stuff. But right now I live in a 66 square meters apartment on fourth floor. And if I'm going to do this project, I also want to earn money from it. So getting a publisher just doesn't make any sense.
Yep.
But I cannot self-publish to 3, 4, potentially 5,000 books because they take up a lot of space and I do not have space
Need
to have that. And
storage.
then I have to go out and find space in some container or storage room somewhere here in Copenhagen, and that binds me physically to actually be
And it's
on
enough
location.
spot that you've got to account for in the
Yeah,
production.
exactly. So these are projects that may make sense if I had one day can't travel as much because I have to be home more if I get kids, if we decide to get a house, if Sophie get a job for a longer period where it makes sense that we live together in a house, like all those things. So I have these projects, but how I design my life right now, it doesn't make sense. And as I said before, I really do not want to stress too much about it. I can see when I see Nigel, who releases a new book each year, I'm like, oh, I also want to do that. But he already has a house.
He has
He
somewhere where he can store it. Yeah, he's got a garage.
Exactly, yeah. He can benefit from his family. He can pay his family to package and ship and all those
Sure.
things. I would have to do those things myself. And that would take time away from doing the stuff I actually want to do, which is why I found that ebooks and my digital products, it works better for me. Do I miss out on a potential income? Probably. But
Mm.
is it worth for me to get to the point where I'm super stressed about it? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
So these are the decisions I have to make, and I have to be very honest about it and say, okay, I earn less money, but I'm having a better life and enjoying what I do. So I do not make landscape photography stressful because after all, it's my passion for it that makes everything go
Yeah.
and make everything work. And if I lose that passion, yeah, I don't have a job anymore.
Yeah. If nothing else, but the quality of your work would suffer as well as the stress
Exactly.
builds, I
Yeah.
think, because you're thinking about other things rather than focusing on the photography.
Exactly.
I'm interested about the YouTube channel and how that got started, where you came up with the idea to start one in the first place.
Mhm.
But I'm also really interested in the way that journey has happened for you and how you feel that's going. I know a lot of people in the YouTube space are complaining about the fact that it's really hard to actually get views, hard to keep views going as the platform has grown. How's that journey been for you and where did it all start?
Yeah, tell me about the complaining. I think about that every single day. Like every hour, it's so annoying. YouTube is still decent. It's good for me. Instagram is, for me at least, complete garbage. But we can
I
talk
got to
about that
agree with you
later.
there.
But so my channel right now, it's actually my third YouTube channel. I didn't really try to monetize my two first YouTube channels, and it was
Yeah.
about something completely else. So I had a little bit of, as I said, experience with videography. So for me, it was also quite obvious that I wanted to make some kind of YouTube channel here. And as I said, I recorded a lot of video on my first trip to Iceland, but I didn't want to just fire off all that content in like an Iceland reel, which was the
Yeah.
big things back then. fast-paced music, 2 minutes, and then done. I wanted to figure out how I could make more videos from what I've already filmed.
Sure.
And that was where I basically came up with the idea to make these guide videos to Iceland, because in that way I could separate my photography from what was actually the main purpose of the video. So I inspired landscape photographers to go and photograph these different places where I talked about what you could expect from there. And these were my suggestions or my ideas about what you can photograph there. And in that way, it was up to people themselves to go and explore the place and see the place. And they didn't have to take the same photos as I did. And it so happened that there was a hole in the market for that back then. So that made me, I already had an audience on Instagram back then, but it made me really explode and go beyond many of the people who were already on YouTube doing landscape photography, because I think most people just were a copy of Thomas Heaton back then. And Thomas had only been, I think he started a year and a half or so before me. So he was also quite new to it back then. But I just did my travel landscape photography guide videos for a few years, basically up to the pandemic. I started slowly making videos about composition and a little bit more like vlogging style also. So I like mixed it. And when I started hanging out with Nigel Danson, I could see like he really just went for the photography part of it more so than the travel part of it.
Yeah.
And I could see how that worked really well for him. And I could see that if I wanted to stay relevant, I needed to focus more on the landscape photography part of it rather than the travel guide part of it. Because each time I finished a series, let's say from Iceland, and then I started something from the Faroe Islands. The people who want to go to Iceland, but maybe don't want to go to the Faroe Islands, they didn't watch those videos, and so on and so forth. So then I made my series from Britain, which really exploded, which was great. But then suddenly when I went back to Iceland, or I went to southern Germany or the Alps, a lot of those people did not watch my videos. And suddenly I figured, oh, okay, so a lot of the people who have been watching this actually watch my videos from Britain, maybe because they even are from Britain and wanted to see how I photograph Britain. And trying to figure out how this mass psychology and audiences work was actually quite interesting. Luckily for me, I'm interested in psychology and mass psychology and sociology and all that stuff. So looking at the statistics that YouTube provide actually is interesting for me too. I want to see what's going on. And all that stuff with, oh, you should just make videos exactly as you want to make them. There's a reason why it's called the struggling artist. It's because the artist is thinking in, what do I want to do? Not how can I provide value? And if you're not thinking, how can I provide value? Then people will never, ever jump on to what you do. And trying to fuse this thing where, how can I provide value, but also express myself? That's the real art of doing YouTube. Because if you're only there to provide value, then it may not be super meaningful for yourself. And that is the hard part. So I slowly transitioned into being more educational with landscape photography and started the vlogging part more. And when the pandemic hit, I was basically stuck to only doing Denmark. Luckily, I had already figured out that, oh, there's actually something about Denmark. And photographing in Denmark, I basically have everything to myself. There are plenty of landscape photographers here in Denmark, but there's just not a big culture around landscape photography in Denmark, as I see in... I often compare Denmark and the Netherlands, because the Netherlands is equally a small country. It's equally a decently flat country, but they have quite a big tradition and culture for landscape photography in the Netherlands, which for me is, how did that happen? Because when I look at Denmark, we have more or less the same. They have the tulips, they have the windmills, but we also have windmills in Denmark, and I found a couple of tulip fields in Denmark too. But I think that is, especially in Denmark, I found out that I basically have everything to myself. So I can actually do a whole lot of original landscape photography in Denmark and do stuff that maybe a lot of people who live in the US, maybe who live in Britain, live in other parts of the world see as, oh, that's actually quite original and quite exotic, even though for me, it's in no way, shape, or form original
Yeah.
or exotic. But in the community part aspects of it, it's maybe something new.
Cool. In terms of expressing yourself, you've got YouTube, which is visual but audio visual, landscape
Mhm.
photography, which is very visual. In terms of your expression, which do you prefer, the audio visual or just the pure visual side of things?
It works really good with me on YouTube right now. So I think that's the way I prefer it. When we talk about like the end product for most landscape photographers are always like the big framed print. And I really
Yep.
thoroughly enjoy that. I enjoy printing or getting my photos printed. And I think I, like most other landscape photographers, dream of having their own gallery and people come in and people look at your work and they get super excited about it and you can sell your work and you can become this famous landscape photographer and a millionaire and all that stuff, and we can keep dreaming, all of us. And I cannot see how I would have time to do both YouTube and live off of selling off my prints. Selling prints in and of itself is more than a full-time job. So I stick with this for now. So this is how I express myself. But yeah, of course, at some point it would be cool to have a gallery. No doubt about that. But I'm not sure exactly how to do that. I have a friend and colleague here in Denmark. He only photographed down by the Sea in southwest
Yep.
Denmark, and he sells his prints to tourists. He has a gallery in Ribe, which is a big town down there, and it seems to work for him because he sells to tourists. My landscape photography is a bit more like all over the place.
Yeah,
It
right.
has become more focused on Denmark. I just a month ago or so looked at my videos. What did I actually produce of videos last year? And like half of them are from being outside in the Danish nature and the vlogging part of it. Then there I have some in studio, more tutorial-ish stuff, and then I have maybe a quarter of the entire thing is from my travels. So it's definitely more focused on Denmark. So at some point, yeah, it would be cool to have some kind of gallery and do it like that. But as long as YouTube works for me, I think the safest way without putting all my eggs in one basket is to stick to YouTube and use that to express myself.
Yeah, fair enough.
And obviously, I enjoy making the videos. Like
Yeah,
I
although I assume
editing the
that you wouldn't
videos.
do it otherwise, would you?
Exactly, yeah. Editing the videos can be a little bit harder, and I'm notoriously bad at just simplifying my process. Just like I just came home from Japan, and that was both like a vacation for me and Sophia, but also I had to do some kind of work over there to bring something home, and I also wanted to photograph it. But I mainly just filmed a lot of B-roll. So when I come back home here, I had to make the entire script for the video, put the
Yep.
B-roll on top, and also make the videos.
Yeah.
And making that script in and of itself was an entire day's work. Whereas if I had done it over there and just made it vlogging style, I
Yeah.
would already have that part done.
Mm.
So yeah, I'm just really bad at making simple videos. I always make it the hardest for myself. But at the very least, I feel that the product is good.
Yeah. No, I certainly think the product's good. I'm interested in where people live and how that may influence how they shoot as opposed to what they shoot. Obviously, you live somewhere where there's waterfalls, you go and shoot waterfalls. You live by the
Mm.
sea, you go and shoot the seaside. I'm more interested in the style and the stylistic choices that might come from where you live and how that's influenced by where you live or where you travel in certain circumstances. How do you think that works for you?
It didn't work well to begin with because I couldn't see what Denmark actually had to offer. But
Mm.
now that I've learned what Denmark has to offer and how I can work it to be beneficial and the experiences I've got over the years, I'm like, oh, okay. I very much think of what is the subject of my scene. And obviously, a waterfall or an epic mountain or a glacier or the Northern Lights and stuff like that is more exotic, it's more impressive, it's more wow than some kind of, I don't know, random tree or a little fishing boat or a beach with nothing on it. Or so I thought. the thing about Denmark is I found that to get my best photos from Denmark, I'm very dependent on the conditions. Obviously, when we have a lot of forests, fog is very beneficial. So I generally do not go out and photograph in forests unless I have fog. That does not mean that I cannot get interesting photos without it. But fact of the matter is I also have to think, how is this photo both resonating with myself,
Hmm.
with a potential audience?
Yep.
It's more, I usually think of both my videos, but also my photos as check boxes. How many boxes can I check?
Yeah. Okay.
First and foremost, is this meaningful for me?
Yep.
And I think that's the most important for all artists, people who consider themselves photographers and artists. How is this meaningful for me? But I also find that a lot of people who are like, oh, you should only shoot for yourself. Fine, but then you're not going to have a career. The end. All photographers who live off of commercial photography or project photography, who sell it to magazines, all that stuff, always have to think, how can I make this project resonate with an audience? How can I sell it to a magazine? How is this relevant for other people?
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of boxes that you need to check. And I think at the very least, that is how I think. So when I go out in Denmark and take photographs, yes, I do go out sometimes. Just the other day, I went out to photograph a church here in Copenhagen. I'm like, I look at the photos. I like what I look at, but I don't think it's going to resonate with a whole lot of people, and it's not going to fit into my portfolio as a whole. And okay, fine, I was out. I got some photos, but it's not nothing I'm going to release.
Okay.
But for me, when I go out, it's more about what does Denmark has to offer. It's the still scenes, it's the calm scenes, it's tranquility. It's not like yelling in your face, like, oh, this is epic. A lot of people
Yeah, it's
associate
not the
me and
Dolomites
my
or
work, yeah,
Patagonia.
with this statement like, oh, it's absolutely epic. And it is when you're standing on a cliff's edge 500 meters above the ocean in the Faroe Islands. Yes, then it's epic. But when
Yep.
I go out on a calm, foggy morning next to the fjord with completely calm water, and you have a little boat, and you get the perfect reflection and a couple of birds flying over it, I would never ever say that's epic. And a lot of people are like, oh, Mads, you always say things are epic. I made 25 videos from Denmark last year where I did not use the word epic. So it's really like figuring out, what does the countryside that you're in actually offer you?
Mm.
Living in Copenhagen, it is a little bit harder because I have this mental block. I have to get out of Copenhagen, and I live on Zealand right now. And I feel like no matter where I want to go, it takes an hour to drive there
Yeah.
on the entire island. Whereas when I lived back home in Jutland, middle part of Jutland, that area we call it the Lake Highlands.
Mm.
It's a miniature version of Lake District, but in Denmark. And there it's relatively easy to get to interesting landscape photography locations within half an hour
Yeah. Yeah.
if you have a car. It's a little bit harder here in Zealand. It was actually funny when I moved over here. I contacted a few different landscape photographers and what can you photograph over here? What is interesting? And just to get a feel for it. And there was just like silence. I was like, oh, okay, there have to be something. Like, there have
There's
to be
got to be an
something.
opportunity there though, because
Exactly, yeah.
that
So
sounds like a gap in the market.
yeah, exactly. So I was like, okay, I guess I just have to go out and find it myself. And that is where I like started looking into, okay, can I find forests that have wild garlic? Where are there hills on this island? Are
Mm.
there fjord areas? I knew there are fjord areas in this island, and all those things. So I simply just look for things that could potentially be interesting for a landscape photographer,
Yeah.
which is landscapes and nature stuff. Instead of trying to just go and get uninspired by driving on the motorway and looking at all the industrial stuff, where is nature?
Yeah.
Go there, explore that.
Awesome. Are there any particular locations, and I don't mean exact, I don't want your tripod coordinates or anything like that, but any particular locations that are a favorite that you keep going back to? And it could be because there's unfinished business there, or it just could be that you just love going there. What kind of places are you going to?
Over the past years, I've really had a thing for lone trees, and
Mhm.
I've been looking a lot for beautiful, aesthetically pleasing lone trees standing in an environment that is beautiful.
Mm.
And I have a tendency to return to those again and again. there's not a whole lot. Like it's funny when I'm with Nigel in England and we drive around, I'm just like looking out, even from the motorway. Oh, lone tree, beautiful. Lone tree, beautiful. Whoa, this is so cool. Oh, to the English listeners, the British listeners, you guys have it so easy. You have it so easy. Whereas here in Denmark, I definitely have to explore a bit more to find those. But when I find them, they're just so aesthetically pleasing. But I can't keep photographing lone trees for the rest of my life. So
Yeah.
it's especially during around the fjord areas. If I can find like boats that line up with a sunset or sunrise, if I can find some hilly areas where I can have my different subjects in those hilly areas, and if I can put some heather into that. Heather, for those who don't know, is a purple flower, which is decently common in Denmark. As I just mentioned, wild garlic. How can I use that? I still have not actually captured a really good wild garlic photo in Denmark with a foggy forest. It's notoriously hard to get fog in Denmark in May when we get the wild garlic. So it's a lot about exploring. And then when you find a location where it's just really like, okay, this is the composition, it just really works and it will
Yep.
work in basically all conditions, then I have a tendency to return to it again and again. It's also fun to return to the same location because then you can get it with snow, you can get it during the golden hour, you can get it in blue hour, you can maybe get it with northern lights, you can get it in summer when there's some, I don't know, not corn, but wheat in the
Yep.
fields around
Yep.
it, and so forth. You can get in many different conditions, and that actually also makes for interesting projects. Like you can photograph the same location once every month for a year, and you can make a calendar out of that, and boom, then you have an interesting product. It may not appeal to someone in Australia, but it could appeal to the Danish market.
Sure.
So yeah, in that way. So it's
Mind you, there might be an Australian visitor that comes to see Queen Mary and brings back
exactly.
to their wall.
Yeah, the one thing that is just the most common thing I keep telling people if they want to succeed in landscape photography and do good landscape photography is put in the time. Like you have to put in the time, whether you sit in front of a computer and research or you go out into the field and you take photos. I'm not the proponent of saying you just should go out and shoot without also evaluating your what you do. I as a teacher, I'm always like theory and practice have to work together, and you have to evaluate what you're doing, and you have to
Yep.
put in the hours then, and do deliberately
Mm.
learn and deliberately go out and explore and deliberately do X, Y, and Z to become better. But you have to put in the time. The time is the one thing, like not handed to you. And the sad truth is that when you are also a YouTuber on landscape photography, videos with fast in the title, learn landscape photography fast. This is how you succeed fast. All those things have a tendency to do well because people do not want to put in the hours it takes. And I'm usually saying, okay, fine. Then you learn landscape photography. Let's say you start landscape photography and within half a year, you are the best landscape photographer in the entire world. You have polished your photos to the place where each time you upload to Instagram, you get 20,000 likes. Each time you upload to Facebook, your photos go viral. You always get the most likes in any photography group. Anywhere you win all the prizes. So what? So
Yep.
what? Is it still meaningful for you?
Yeah.
It the journey of learning, the journey of actually doing landscape photography, the journey of doing something original. I get the biggest kick out of what I call my stepping stone photos. It's the photos I take where I'm like, oh, I learned something new.
Mm.
Oh, I had something pre-visualized where everything came together. Great. And that progress of actually learning, that is what is meaningful for me. Running a business, yes, it's great to have your photos go viral. Yes, it's great to get the acknowledgement and so forth, on and so forth. Yes, when it's my work, obviously I have to think and how do I make money off of it. But the work in and of itself still has to be meaningful for me.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
I think
that's
that's
yeah,
that's just a fantastic point. The time and effort that you've actually got to put in, where a lot of the reward comes from, not necessarily
exactly. Yeah,
the
yeah.
end result of, as you said, likes on Facebook or on Instagram.
Yeah, it's funny because I obviously being on YouTube, you cannot compare yourself with all the other YouTubers and what they
Sure.
say and their philosophy and all that stuff. And Thomas Eaton, a friend of mine, and It's funny with him. I think we think about it a little bit differently because for him it's very much about being out in nature,
Mm.
and then the photos is like a byproduct of that. Whereas I think in the photo first,
Yeah,
and
right.
then I go out into nature. I enjoy being in nature. I don't mind being in nature without actually producing something. But for me, for photography, I think in the photo first.
Mm.
That's not always beneficial. Likewise, it's probably not always beneficial for him just going out into nature. No, it's just two different philosophies and two different approaches to it. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's beneficial, sometimes it's not. But I'm very, it sounds wrong when I say product oriented. I'm the product, that the final photo, I'm very oriented against that.
Sure.
I try to put myself in the most optimal conditions all the time. And I don't always go out if I see that, okay, it's just a bland, boring day with overcast skies and no texture in the clouds. But I also found over the years that I can easily make interesting photos in those conditions. But because I'm not going out, then I will miss out on those photos. But I would prioritize going out on a foggy morning instead, or days with epic light, with showers where the light changes all the time and you get light beams and all that stuff. Because that kind of weather, it just speaks more to me and the work that I do. So that's what I try to find.
Yeah, awesome. You talked about one of the most memorable shoots that you did there in Iceland at the beginning. What's the worst time you've had out in photography?
I Oh, you made me think there because it
Everyone
goes to
wants to
show
talk
how
about the
passionate
good
I am
times.
about it
I'm
because
interested in.
I usually don't have a bad time, but I can come up with one. But it's always when I manage to ruin some gear or something like that, or I miss out on a good
That's
photo.
a
That's
good
the
one.
worst part. Yeah.
I've broken a few like
There was one point where I was like, oh, I got too greedy. So I was flying my drone in Iceland,
hmm
and I had found there was this big arch up on top of a mountain. It's close to the ice lagoon, glacier lagoon. And if you know where it is, you know where it is.
hmm
But back then, it was back then we had only just got drones that could actually reach that place. And I think I would probably have been one of the first people to photograph that place. And I really wanted to go there and photograph the sunrise through that arch, which would be very original for an
Yeah.
Iceland photo. So I was flying my drone, the DJI Mavic 2 Pro, my first drone, and I was flying around there, and it was just like from where I took off, and then I could fly up along the mountain, and I could just get up to the 500 meters limit because it was 500 meters up.
Yep.
And I was flying around, I got my footage, I was like, yes, this is so good. I get exactly what I want. And then I got greedy. I knew that if I could just fly fast enough through the arch, I would lose the signal to the drone, but then the signal would pick up again on the other side of
On
the
the other
drone,
side.
on the other side of the arch. So it should be fine. So I did that once and it worked fine. And then I was like so low on battery. I was like, I can just get one more, just one more. And it just switched from the setting where it was like saying, Mads, you have to return to home, to where it started force landing. And I
Yep.
lost signal just when it started force
Oh no.
landing. So there's a drone standing up on that arch. And that was probably the worst. I was so angry at myself because it was just so stupid. It was so stupid. And obviously I had recorded the stream. So I had it like in 1080p, the video footage and stuff, but it never really made for a high quality photo. I was so angry at myself. I had so much energy and that I hiked up to another location close by and photographed that during winter. And that was quite unique in and of itself. You had to climb up like 1.5 kilometer to an altitude of maybe, I don't know, 300 meters above the sea. And I did that through half a meter snow. And I just punished myself like that. But I guess from there I got an original photo. So that way I managed to make it into something positive in the end. But that was probably the worst, I think. So yeah, when I ruin gear or I get greedy and I push myself too far and it doesn't work out, that is when I get angry at myself.
I'm about to rip the front cab of my motorhome apart because we were away last week, and I went out, did a morning shoot, did some stuff on the tripod, got the drone out, did some stuff, got some nice footage, got some nice images. I hope, I think, what I remember, it looked pretty good. I
Mhm.
got back into the cabin of the motorhome, opened up the bag where the drone was. How they have that little, you push down on the nano card on the actual
Mhm.
memory card. You push
Oh
down,
yeah, yeah,
it brings out. This actually, normally it just pops and you pull it out.
yeah.
This didn't. For some reason, either my finger slipped off it or something, but it actually flipped up and over back behind me. And it's a nano card, so
Yeah.
tiny. And do you think I could find it?
No,
No, it's not on the
no.
floor. Okay, so I checked all my clothes, I checked the seat. There's some vents under the seat that it could have fallen down, but I've got to then
Oh,
put the seat out to actually find it. So that's my
bummer.
next
Yeah.
get the spanners out,
Yeah.
and because we're
It,
now home, I wasn't going to do it while I was away,
yeah.
but
Yeah, it's third generation of drones right now, and they just have not figured out how to design
no.
it properly. Yeah, bummer.
I've got a few questions that I almost always ask, and they're around things like how you deal with when you're struggling to find inspiration with your photography and when you've hit a creative wall. Have you ever had that happen to you? And if so, how did you handle it?
Yeah, I mean, it does happen. I've only made few videos about it on YouTube. Obviously, a lot of people can relate to it, so maybe I should make more, but I usually just fight through it. It usually happens in the winter period because nature is just less inspiring during winter. But I've also found over the years that some of my favorite photos were taken in the winter period, so there's really no excuse. It still
I
depends
love
on
winter
the
photography.
yeah, it still depends on the conditions. If I get snow, obviously it's inspiring. I can go out and photograph. I found it notoriously hard to photograph in snow and get good photos in snow. Hoarfrost, everything looks amazing, but
Yeah,
snow itself can actually be many of the scenes that I can photograph here in Denmark can look very messy when there's snow and if there's not
yeah.
enough snow. It's extremely rare that we get enough snow that we don't have
You need a
vegetation.
real, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But as long as I just get stormy conditions or hoarfrost or fog or something like that, the winter conditions look really nice. And then I just try to go to locations that are not really super dependent on foliage. So it's especially during winter where I photograph more lighthouses or maybe do a little bit more buildings. So I actually benefit from the fact that there are no leaves on the trees. So the trees look different. But generally, yeah, I just fight through it. I know it's mostly just in my head, and if it's really bad, I sit in the car, I go into the car, I just drive out because my experience is that I start seeing things. And if it's really bad, then I leave my camera at home and go out. And then I get angry at myself because I left the camera back home because then I start seeing things I wouldn't have seen anyway. Yeah, it's more a mental thing to get through it. I did make a video a couple of weeks back about fighting uninspiredness. It didn't really do that well. So I guess people just want to see the optimistic stuff. But yeah, it's just about fighting through
Yeah,
it.
I think the struggles, they're real, they're a part of it, and they're a part of the human condition. And for
Yeah.
me, digging into that and getting people's opinions on it's really important because otherwise you don't talk about it. And everything, it's right, the social media hit reel as opposed to the blooper reel is reality. That these are the
Yeah.
happen on social media.
Yeah. We can't go around and be super happy all the time. And
Exactly.
and just before we started here, already we started like talking about the world situation right now. We shouldn't dig into that, but I can completely understand why the past 5 years
Hmm.
have been problematic for a lot of people. And
Absolutely.
I think it's especially during the pandemic, a lot of people actually found the creative side of themselves to spend time on something that wasn't as negative or depressive.
Well,
Yeah.
of the pandemic itself. It's one of the reasons why I started it was we were in 100 days of lockdown where the furthest I could travel was 5 kilometers from the front door. I live
Exactly.
in the middle of the suburbs of Sydney, and for me, that's not an inspiring photography landscape.
Nope. It
So I have another way of
maybe
getting inspired.
yeah, that is where you start going into street photography and stuff like that. I quite enjoy. I completely do not make that style of photography, but Nick Carver, for those of you who do not know, he photographs like liquor stores in the
Yeah, service
US. He
stations.
photographs,
Yeah,
yeah, old gas stations that are just falling apart.
shopping
Like
center car
imagine
park.
the yeah, Route 66 sign and stuff like that with a bit of neon lights and all that stuff. Fantastic photographer, makes really great videos here on YouTube too. It's photography that I probably would not do. You can also see James Popsey's and Rick Bebbington, a couple of my friends also, like how they have maybe gone a little bit away from classic epic nature photography as me and Nigel do. And they are more like human nature and yeah, again, gas stations and all that stuff. So they go in that direction. And another of my good friends, German photographer Kai Hornung,
Yep.
who I've also traveled with, he also started out with the epic landscapes and all that stuff. He sometimes do it too, but he has gone way more into the more abstract and intimate stuff. And
Yeah, yeah.
Hans Gunnar Aslaksen, Norwegian photographer whose background is digital design, he also make more abstract stuff today and fine art prints. I'm just because my background with epic fantasy and computer games and all that stuff, I found that the epic vista and the fairy tale forest, it's just where what I like the most. And then on top of that, I add a little bit more like document-ish landscape photography from Denmark because I have this nostalgic feeling about the Danish nature.
Where do you see photography's place in society?
I think it depends what kind of photography, I guess, that we mean. Do we mean commercial photography that is all about like selling products? Do we mean documentarist photography that the media is doing, war photography, or do we mean the more just fine art photography that probably you and I and most of the listeners do, where it's more about like our creative output? I still think it's super important. I don't think it's going to go away. On the contrary, despite the huge amount of AI picture content coming out, I think a little bit like when Photoshop and digital photography reached the point where there was like a lot of composite photography and all that stuff, then suddenly we got a renaissance of film photography, and people associate film photography with being more authentic.
Yep.
Like I can completely argue why that is bullshit.
I have a very good argument for that myself. Yep.
But the point is that I think that the vast majority of people, myself included, we still, I think it's a part of the human condition that we seek out truth, no matter how we perceive the truth is.
Yep.
Those are two separate things. But there is it is part of the human condition that we look at the world and we want our sensory input to align with what is actually going on. And I
Yep.
think that is where the truth things are. And that was a little bit of like my philosophical background and my education.
Sure.
But I think that's a part of the human condition. So I don't think photography is going anywhere because most people who are not like photographers, they associate photography with being a representation of reality, even though it can be so much more than that.
Yeah, yeah. What's the best and or worst piece of advice anyone's given you?
The best and the worst?
Yeah.
Okay, so the worst is it's more like the overarching idea that as a landscape photographer, or an artist or whatever, that you are only authentic if you are only doing exactly what you want to express. It's really
Right.
hard to put this into words,
Yeah.
but that is where the struggling artist comes from.
Yep.
I think that's the worst part. It's when I hear photographers say that he's inauthentic because he knows how to earn money, or he's only doing it for the money. And all these arguments, or because he earns money, or because you have to think about money, then his work is not authentic.
Yeah.
Then he does things because this is the best thing for him because he needs to earn money. something like that.
Yeah.
That's
So
and then you are not allowed to do X, Y, and Z
yeah,
because it's not authentic. I think that set of ideas is probably the worst. It's the same thing with Instagram, where Instagram, it was used, there was this narrative about how Instagram should be your portfolio and you should just upload photos no matter if they get likes or not get likes. That's not how Instagram works. At very least, not if you run a business, then Instagram becomes your business platform. You
yeah,
can use Instagram in so many different ways. But if I kept uploading all the photos that do not get likes, then I die on Instagram. It's a useless platform. Nobody will see my work because nobody interact with the work.
yeah,
And you
yeah,
need that interaction on social media. If you benefit from social media,
yeah,
there's a whole other world of how you can earn money from landscape photography, but let's not get into that. But the point is that there are so many narratives that we have to break to actually make it. So
hmm,
I think that is both the worst and the best, is that in my experience, if you actually want to make it, then you need to keep a distance to people who are very loud and who want to dictate how things should or should not be done.
yeah,
Or at the very least, take it with a grain of salt and be critical towards it. Generally, do what works for you, obviously within the law.
yeah, sure.
uh, yeah, so I think these are things, and obviously, just if you hate doing landscape photography, you should probably like do something else if it has become a chore for you.
Yeah,
I would still say the best advice is still just make sure that you keep the passion for it, because else you will just burn out at some point. But
absolutely.
definitely, there's a lot of loud voices who say that you should do things in a specific way, and maybe, okay, listen to it, take it in. Is it beneficial? Yes or no? Is it actually beneficial what they're saying? And the same thing with me. Whatever I say in this podcast or whatever I say on YouTube, you may completely disagree with what I'm saying. Figure out if something else works for you. Like, I think it's most important to be open. Not so open
Yeah,
that your brain falls out, but be open to alternatives.
yeah, fantastic. Are there any photographers that you think I should be adding to my list?
Many of my colleagues really inspire me. So Nigel Danson,
Sure.
James Popsis, he does completely different photography from me, but I still really enjoy his photos.
Yeah, I really
Um,
like his work. Yeah,
yeah, Jeroen van Nieuwenhoven, my workshop partner in Iceland. He's originally Belgian. His work is fantastic, especially all the stuff with volcanoes and drones and all that stuff. Sam Slikruna, Maltese photographer, he photographs also in Iceland and the Faroe Islands, but we mainly do our workshops in the Dolomites and
sure,
in
sure.
Italy, also Slovenia. His work is fantastic. There are so many great photographers out there. So yeah, it stays within in my own social circles right now.
Oh, that's
But we
fine.
have already talked with Michael Shaneblum. Like I think he's fantastic. Jack Lodge, who I've obviously also started working with, his work is fantastic. Yeah,
Yep.
so there's so many.
Yeah, brilliant. All right. Thank you so much. I've got one more question, and for many people, it's the most important question I ask because it's something that I've been trying to get to the bottom of since the beginning of the
Mhm.
podcast. Do you like pineapple on pizza?
I am very neutral towards pineapple on pizza. One of the
I'm the
few.
same. I'll eat it I won't
Yeah,
order it. Yeah.
I like it. If I ever made a pizza myself, I wouldn't put pineapple on it. Do I ever order pineapple pizza? No, I prefer the salad, kebab dressing,
Okay.
actually. Yeah.
Wow. All right. It's been wonderful having you on the show, Mads. Thank you so much for taking the time to share some of your wisdom and stories. Where can people find your work?
I would say my homepage is the key to everything. So MPI, so Mads Peter Iversen, photo.dk. And then, of course, just search my name on Google. You will find Instagram, YouTube, everything. Yeah.
Brilliant. I'll put links to everything on the show notes. Thanks very much, Mads.
Thank you for having me. It has been a joy talking a little bit deeper than usually.
Excellent. Thanks again for listening to Landscape Photography World. I hope you enjoyed the show and keep listening because I'll be joined by some great guests in upcoming episodes. You can find my work in this podcast at grantswinburnphotography.com. I'm also on Vero, Photo, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm Grant Swinburne. Hope to see you out shooting soon.